Why couldn't a first-class ticket stop a slap in front of hundreds of passengers? Why did a single glance suffice to turn a VIP passenger into someone suspicious, needing further verification? Malik Johnson sat upright in seat 2A, his composed gaze giving him the look of a fresh graduate studying abroad. His youthful, unbothered appearance made it easy to mistake him for someone who had simply been lucky enough to receive an upgrade. Sarah Chen was a blonde flight attendant with sharp features and a confident stride. She approached with a polite smile that flickered briefly before vanishing the moment her eyes met Malik's face. She stopped, glanced at the ticket, then looked up with a pointed, doubtful gaze. "I need to check your ticket one more time," she said, her tone flat but deliberately cold, as if she were merely following procedure while making sure everyone nearby understood something wasn't quite right with this passenger. The first-class cabin seemed quieter than usual. Heads turned. Some passengers raised their eyebrows. Others leaned in to whisper, while a few discreetly reached for their phones, perhaps anticipating a short video worthy of going viral. Malik calmly extended the same ticket that had already been checked, his expression so composed it was impossible to tell what he was thinking. And when he reached for his phone and made a brief, firm call, the aircraft came to an unexpected halt on the tarmac, as if responding to an urgent order from the highest level. What seemed like a harmless gesture, a slap, had just struck not only a man, but an entire power structure, and Malik was ready to respond. "You won't believe who they just disrespected at 30,000 feet. Sarah Chen disappears into the galley with Malik's boarding pass, her urgent whispers audible but indistinct to passengers trying to eavesdrop on the developing situation. She returns moments later with David Morrison, whose silver hair and stern expression suggest decades of unquestioned authority in the airline industry. David's 50-something face carries the kind of practiced skepticism that comes from years of dealing with what he considers problem passengers who don't understand their place in the carefully ordered hierarchy of commercial aviation. The head flight attendant approaches Malik with deliberate steps, his posture radiating the confidence of someone accustomed to having his assessments accepted without question or challenge. His eyes perform a quick inventory of Malik's appearance. The expensive casual wear, the high-end tablet, the comfortable way he occupies space in first class, and his expression suggests none of it adds up correctly in his mental calculations of who belongs where. "Sir, we're going to need some additional identification beyond your boarding pass," David announces, his voice carrying the weight of what he presents as official policy. "Company security protocols require comprehensive verification for certain types of bookings, especially when there might be questions about reservation authenticity or passenger eligibility." Malik continues reviewing the quarterly reports displayed on his tablet screen, the irony completely lost on David that the young man he's interrogating is studying Apex Airlines' own financial data with the familiarity of someone who understands every line item. The numbers reveal a disturbing pattern of discrimination complaints that previous management had systematically dismissed as statistical anomalies, rather than systematic problems requiring immediate intervention and cultural transformation. He looks up with measured calm, noting David's employee identification number prominently displayed on his name tag, a security feature Malik had personally implemented during the corporate transition process to ensure accountability and transparency throughout the organization. "I provided my boarding pass and government-issued identification during the standard boarding procedure, which I believe satisfies all federal requirements." David's voice hardens like concrete setting in winter air, his authority apparently challenged by what he perceives as unnecessary questioning of established procedures. "Well, sir, we're requesting additional verification now. Federal security regulations give flight crews broad discretionary authority to ensure passenger authenticity and overall flight safety." The other first-class passengers lean forward in their seats with the eager attention of people expecting entertainment that will break the monotony of their travel experience. Several retrieve their phones, apparently anticipating content worthy of social media documentation. Their assumptions about who represents the problem in this scenario are written clearly across their faces. Before they've heard a single word of actual explanation, a woman in her 60s, seated in row 3, whispers to her husband with theatrical concern, designed to be overheard by everyone nearby. Security issues before we've even taken off? What kind of people are they letting fly these days? Her words carry the practiced precision of someone skilled at plausible deniability, while making her meaning crystal clear. Malik reaches for his leather wallet, mentally cataloging David's employee number and Sarah's identification details for future reference should this situation escalate beyond reasonable boundaries. Company policy mandates visible identification for all personnel, a transparency measure designed to ensure accountability that Malik had personally championed during policy development sessions with the board of directors. As he extends his California driver's license toward David, the head attendant examines it with the intensity of a customs official processing a suspicious passport at an international border. He holds the document up to the cabin lighting, checks the photograph against Malik's face multiple times, and studies the printed information as if searching for evidence of sophisticated forgery. Malik Johnson? David reads aloud, pronouncing each syllable as if the name itself contains hidden meaning that requires careful analysis. California resident, 25 years old. He pauses dramatically for effect. That's quite young for first-class international travel. How exactly did you manage to afford this level of service today? The question hangs in the pressurized cabin air like toxic gas, its implications slicing through any pretense of routine security verification and revealing the underlying assumptions driving this interrogation. Several passengers nod approvingly, apparently viewing the question as legitimate customer service rather than invasive harassment based on racial profiling. Malik maintains his composure with the practiced calm of someone who has navigated such encounters his entire life, from exclusive prep schools to Ivy League universities to corporate boardrooms. I imagine I purchased my ticket through the same reservation system and payment methods as every other passenger on this aircraft. His measured response seems to frustrate David, who clearly expected either defensive explanations or detailed financial justification that would satisfy his curiosity about how a young black man could legitimately afford premium travel. Sarah appears at David's shoulder like a supporting actor stepping into a carefully rehearsed scene. We just want to ensure there wasn't some kind of mistake with our booking system, Sarah adds, her tone suggesting helpful concern while her words carry entirely different implications about eligibility and deservingness. Sometimes people discover ways to exploit promotional codes or take advantage of system glitches to access services they couldn't ordinarily afford. Her meaning cuts through the diplomatic language like a blade through silk, suggesting that Maliki's presence represents some form of fraud or charity rather than a legitimate business transaction. The implication that he somehow cheated his way into first class rather than earning his seat through normal commercial means reveals the fundamental assumptions driving their suspicion. Malik's phone illuminates again with an incoming call marked Emergency Board Meeting. The timing couldn't be more critical. This is the day Apex Airlines planned to announce his appointment as Chief Executive Officer to company leadership, industry analysts, and financial media outlets worldwide. He declines the call while maintaining perfect composure, internally calculating the cascading effects of each delayed minute on corporate communications and shareholder confidence. The elderly businessman in seat Tunne observes the entire exchange with obvious approval, nodding at what he perceives as appropriate crew diligence in maintaining the standards and exclusivity that justify his premium ticket price. His satisfaction suggests he views Malik's presence in first class as an anomaly, requiring correction rather than a normal business transaction between customer and airline. David Morrison returns to Malik's vicinity with the persistence of storm clouds gathering before a hurricane, his hovering presence creating an atmosphere of surveillance that other passengers interpret as validation of their growing suspicions about the young black man in seat 2A. The head attendant's body language communicates authority and suspicion in equal measure, suggesting that his initial assessment has been confirmed rather than resolved. Malik continues his review of Apex Airlines' comprehensive financial reports, his calm professionalism creating a stark contrast to the circus developing around him. The quarterly data reveals customer complaint patterns that clearly indicate systematic discrimination issues across multiple departments and geographic regions, painting a picture of institutional problems that extend far beyond individual employee bias. "Sir, federal aviation regulations require me to ask you to stow that electronic device immediately," David announces with newfound confidence, his voice carrying the weight of official authority. "All personal electronics must be secured during taxi operations and takeoff procedures, for the safety of all passengers and crew members." Malik glances around the first-class cabin with practiced observation skills honed through years of corporate crisis management. 3 other passengers actively use laptops and tablets without any crew interference, their screens glowing with emails, spreadsheets, and entertainment content. A businessman in row 4 conducts an animated phone conversation about stock portfolio adjustments, his voice loud enough to disturb other passengers. A woman in row 2 scrolls through social media while live streaming her travel experience to followers, her commentary including complaints about delayed departure. The selective enforcement is so obvious it borders on comedic, except nothing about systematic discrimination qualifies as amusing to those experiencing it firsthand. Malik responds with careful neutrality, designed to avoid escalation while documenting the clear policy violations occurring simultaneously throughout the cabin. "I notice several other passengers are currently using similar devices, without any requests for compliance with the regulations you've mentioned." David's face flushes red like a warning signal, his authority apparently threatened by reasonable questioning rather than immediate submission to his demands. "Are you arguing with direct crew instructions, sir? That constitutes interference with flight crew duties, which is a federal offense punishable by significant fines and possible imprisonment." The accusation ripples through the cabin like electricity through water, transforming the atmosphere from curious observation to active hostility. Passengers who had been documenting the confrontation with their own phones suddenly look uncertain about their device usage, though none receive similar warnings about federal law violations, despite identical behavior. Malik remains perfectly motionless, his hands visible on the armrests in a gesture of non-threatening compliance that should satisfy any reasonable security concern. "I'm simply requesting clarification about policy application procedures. I'm completely willing to comply with any regulation that applies consistently to all passengers without discrimination, except including." His reasonable response seems to infuriate David further, as if calm rationality represents a form of resistance requiring immediate escalation to higher authorities. The head attendant signals Sarah with the subtle communication of crew members who have coordinated such scenarios multiple times before. Sarah approaches with an expression of concern that belongs in a soap opera rather than a commercial aviation setting, her face suggesting serious worry about passenger safety, despite the complete absence of any threatening behavior. Her dramatic demeanor attracts additional attention from passengers, who begin forming opinions based on crew reactions rather than observed facts. "We've received multiple reports about aggressive and confrontational behavior from this passenger," she announces loudly enough for the entire first-class section to hear every word. "Federal aviation security protocols require immediate intervention when passengers display potentially threatening conduct that could compromise safety." Malik hasn't raised his voice, made sudden movements, or displayed anything resembling aggression during the entire encounter. His threatening conduct consists entirely of existing while black in first class and asking reasonable questions about inconsistent policy enforcement that, any passenger might reasonably request. Could you specify what aggressive behavior you're referencing? Malik asks, maintaining the same calm tone he's used throughout the encounter while internally documenting every false accusation for potential legal proceedings. Sarah and David exchange glances like actors who have forgotten their lines in a play they've performed countless times before. The direct question exposes the completely fabricated nature of their accusations, but they've committed too deeply to their narrative to retreat gracefully without losing face. Your confrontational attitude toward crew authority and persistent refusal to follow federal safety instructions, David improvises, apparently believing that repeating variations of the same baseless accusations will eventually make them true through sheer repetition. We maintain zero tolerance for passenger intimidation of flight personnel. The air marshal materializes as if summoned by some invisible signal that only crew members can detect. Officer Rodriguez, a stocky man whose weathered face suggests extensive experience with actual security threats, approaches with his hand resting casually near his service weapon, his demeanor suggesting genuine concern about reported passenger problems. "Sir, I need you to remain completely calm and cooperative with all crew instructions," Rodriguez announces in the authoritative tone reserved for genuine threats to aircraft security. "We've received reports of disruptive behavior that could potentially compromise flight safety and passenger well-being." Malik looks at the federal officer with something approaching disbelief, the situation having escalated from discriminatory treatment to potential federal charges based on completely fabricated accusations. The involvement of federal law enforcement transforms a customer service issue into a potential criminal matter with serious consequences. "Officer Rodriguez, could you specify what disruptive behavior has been reported?" Malik asks, with the same measured calm he's maintained throughout the ordeal, his legal training helping him navigate the increasingly complex situation. Rodriguez hesitates, clearly unable to articulate anything concrete beyond vague crew allegations that lack specific details or supporting evidence. His training emphasizes supporting flight crew assessments, but his professional experience with actual security threats suggests something fundamental is wrong with their characterization of events. The confrontation reaches its inevitable breaking point when Malik makes the simple request for coffee service he had politely requested over an hour earlier. His reasonable inquiry triggers Sarachen's complete abandonment of any pretense of professional behavior or customer service standards. "Listen carefully," Sarah says, her voice cutting through the cabin's tension like a surgeon's scalpel. "I don't know how you managed to get that seat, but this is first-class service. We provide hospitality to people who actually belong here and can appreciate the premium experience we offer." The words strike the cabin like a physical blow, causing conversations to stop mid-sentence and drawing the attention of passengers throughout the aircraft who sense that something significant is happening. Even the constant hum of the engines seems to quiet in response to the naked prejudice hanging in the pressurized air, like poison gas. Malik feels the familiar sting of a lifetime's accumulation of such moments. The subtle and overt suggestions that his presence in spaces of privilege represents some kind of mistake or charity, rather than earned achievement through hard work and success. But his voice remains steady, with the dignity of someone who refuses to be diminished by ignorance. "And what specific criteria determine who belongs in first class?" he asks, his calm tone creating a stark contrast to Sarah's obvious aggression, while demonstrating the kind of self-control that comes from years of navigating institutional racism. Sarah, apparently emboldened by what she perceives as support from her colleagues and passengers, crosses a line that can never be uncrossed. Her response reveals the poisonous assumptions that have been driving the entire confrontation from its very beginning. People who can actually afford premium service without needing assistance programs, diversity initiatives, or whatever charity organization got you upgraded to a seat you never could have paid for yourself. she declares with the vindictive satisfaction of someone who believes she's exposing fraud. The racial implications explode through the cabin like shrapnel from a devastating bomb, leaving no doubt about the true nature of her assumption. Several passengers nod with obvious approval, their faces showing the satisfaction of seeing their own prejudices validated by someone in authority who shares their worldview. A few begin recording more actively with their phones, anticipating viral content about an entitled passenger being appropriately corrected by professional crew members who understand proper social hierarchy. They have no comprehension that they're documenting systematic discrimination rather than justified enforcement. Malik absorbs the blow with the practiced grace of someone who has survived countless similar attacks throughout his life, from childhood encounters with prejudice to professional environments where his qualifications were constantly questioned. His response demonstrates the kind of dignity that comes from deep inner strength rather than defensive anger. "I see," he says with devastating calm that reveals more strength than any angry response could demonstrate. "And you determined my financial status and eligibility for first-class service based on what specific information? From my reservation or identification documents?" David Morrison senses an opportunity to deliver what he believes will be a finishing blow to Malik's resistance and establish his authority once and for all. His intervention carries the weight of official airline policy and federal authority that should end any further questioning. "Sir, your attitude has become increasingly disruptive and confrontational," David declares, with the confidence of someone who believes he holds all the cards in this confrontation. Federal aviation regulations grant flight crews broad authority to remove passengers who pose threats to flight safety, crew operations, or passenger comfort. The accusation is devastating in its complete disconnection from reality, representing the kind of institutional gaslighting that transforms victims into perpetrators through pure assertion. Malik hasn't raised his voice, used profanity, made threatening gestures, or displayed anything remotely resembling disruptive behavior. His attitude consists entirely of asking reasonable questions while Black, the elderly businessman in seat 2A, decides to share his wisdom with what he perceives as a younger generation lacking proper respect for authority and social hierarchy. His intervention carries the weight of assumed moral authority based on age and perceived social status. "Young man, you should be grateful for whatever opportunity brought you here instead of causing problems for people who earned their seats through hard work and success," he lectures, with the condescending tone of someone who believes prosperity is always deserved and poverty always earned through personal failings. His patronizing speech drips with the assumptions of someone who views success as a zero-sum game, where Malik's presence somehow diminishes his own accomplishments and rightful place in the social order. The lecture reveals decades of accumulated privilege disguised as wisdom. Malik stands slowly, his 6'2" frame commanding attention throughout the first-class cabin. But instead of the anger or frustration his tormentors clearly expect and hope to provoke, he displays something that unnerves them far more completely: absolute calm and unshakable self-control. He retrieves his phone with deliberate movements and places a call that connects immediately on the first ring, as if the person on the other end has been waiting specifically for his contact. The immediate connection suggests the kind of high-level access that most people never experience. "This is Malik," he says quietly, but his tone shifts with subtle authority that suggests natural leadership rather than defensive posturing. "I need you to patch me through to legal immediately." "Yes, I'm fully aware of the board meeting situation. There's a developing incident that takes absolute priority over our scheduled announcements." Stara and David exchange nervous glances for the first time since the confrontation began, their confidence beginning to waver as they notice details they had previously dismissed. The quality of Malik's phone, his calm demeanor under intense pressure, his natural assumption that important people will take his calls immediately. and the unmistakable authority in his voice begin planting seeds of doubt in their previous certainty. David Morrison's accusations of threats and intimidation attract the attention of passengers throughout the entire aircraft, creating a ripple effect that transforms a first-class confrontation into an airline-wide spectacle. Word spreads through economy and business class like wildfire that there's a serious security situation developing in the premium cabin that may affect everyone's travel plans. Sarah Chen capitalizes on the expanding drama by using the aircraft's public address system to make a cryptic announcement that further inflames tensions and brands Malik as a problem passenger in the minds of 300 travelers who have no context for the situation. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to take this opportunity to remind all passengers about the critical importance of full compliance with federal aviation regulations and crew instructions, she announces, her voice carrying the subtle implication that someone is currently refusing to comply with legitimate safety requirements. The announcement effectively turns the entire aircraft against Malik without stating any verifiable facts about his behavior or the nature of the alleged safety violations. Passengers throughout the plane begin looking toward first class with curiosity and growing irritation about potential delays. A second flight attendant, Jennifer Walsh, emerges from the galley to join the growing crew huddle around Malik's seat. She hasn't witnessed any of his alleged misbehavior, but immediately aligns herself with her colleagues in a display of institutional solidarity that prioritizes crew unity over passenger rights or accurate assessment of the situation. We need to document every aspect of this situation thoroughly for the comprehensive federal report, Jennifer declares, treating Malik like a criminal case study rather than a paying customer experiencing systematic discrimination. Her approach suggests this isn't her first experience with such scenarios, and her immediate assumption of Malik's guilt reveals training or culture that shapes crew responses. The captain's voice crackles through the aircraft's communications system, his tone suggesting genuine concern about the reported security situation in his cabin. Folks, we may experience a slight delay in our arrival schedule due to passenger issues that require resolution on the ground with federal law enforcement authorities. Malik realizes they're constructing a comprehensive case against him that could result in arrest, placement on terrorism watch lists, federal prosecution, and public humiliation that would follow him throughout his career. The systematic nature of their approach suggests extensive experience with such character assassination techniques. David escalates the confrontation by demanding Malik relocate to an economy seat for the safety and comfort of other passengers who have paid premium prices for first-class service. When Malik requests the specific federal regulation requiring such involuntary relocation, David cannot provide one because no such regulation exists in aviation law. Failure to comply with crew instructions regarding passenger safety constitutes a federal felony under aviation security statutes, David threatens, apparently believing that invoking federal law will eliminate any further resistance to his demands while establishing his ultimate authority. Malik observes the masterful construction of their systematic discrimination. Every request is impossible to fulfill perfectly. Every response is interpreted as resistance. Every reasonable question is characterized as arguing with authority, and every attempt at civilized dialogue is reframed as threatening behavior requiring federal intervention. His phone rings again with increasing urgency. The caller identification displays emergency line, Apex board chair. Malik looks directly at David before answering, his composure unshaken by the mounting pressure from multiple directions. I need to take this call. It involves genuinely urgent business matters that cannot be delayed, he states with calm authority that suggests familiarity with high-stakes decision-making. David smirks with the satisfaction of someone who believes he's winning a game whose rules only he understands. Nothing could possibly be more urgent than following federal aviation safety protocols and complying with crew instructions for passenger security. The irony is completely lost on him. He's preventing the chief executive officer of Apex Airlines from attending the board meeting that will officially announce Malik's appointment to lead the company and transform its culture. The delay affects not only corporate governance, but shareholder communications and market confidence. Other passengers become increasingly hostile as the confrontation extends beyond their patience for in-flight entertainment. A woman in her 60s loudly complains to anyone within hearing distance about declining standards and inadequate passenger screening procedures. This is exactly why service quality is deteriorating everywhere you look, she announces with the authority of someone who believes her opinion carries special weight. Let anyone purchase first-class tickets, and this is what happens to the entire travel experience. A businessman adds his perspective with the confidence of someone accustomed to having his views validated by others in his social circle. In my day, people understood their place in society and were grateful for opportunities instead of making demands and causing disruptions. Their comments reveal the underlying social dynamics that make systematic discrimination possible. The assumption that Malik's presence represents some kind of unwanted social advancement that threatens their rightful position in the established hierarchy. Malik realizes this confrontation extends far beyond 3 prejudiced employees. It represents a corporate culture that Apex Airlines has allowed to fester throughout its organization for years, creating an environment where discrimination feels natural and justified to those who practice it. Jennifer begins photographing Malik from multiple angles for comprehensive security documentation purposes, treating him like evidence at a crime scene rather than a passenger experiencing harassment. Her methodical approach suggests training in building cases against passengers who don't comply with crew expectations. When he objects to unauthorized photography of his person, she claims it represents standard federal security protocol for documenting disruptive passenger behavior. Malik knows aviation law better than most corporate executives. There is no such protocol for photographing passengers without consent, outside of specific security situations. The air marshal approaches again with heightened concern about the escalating situation he's been told represents a genuine security threat. "Sir, I'm going to need you to remain seated, with your hands visible on the armrests at all times." Malik complies without argument while asking a perfectly reasonable question that exposes the fabricated nature of the security protocols being applied to him. "Officer Rodriguez, what specific federal regulation requires passengers to keep their hands visible while seated during normal flight operations?" Rodriguez cannot answer because no such regulation exists outside of specific security situations involving actual threats to aircraft safety. He's being systematically manipulated by crew members who understand that most passengers don't know the actual scope and limitations of federal aviation law. Malik's phone display shows 23 missed calls from board members, legal counsel, the CEO transition team, major shareholders, and financial media contacts. Each missed call represents a delay in the most important corporate announcement in Apex Airlines' recent history. Malik's phone rings with an urgent call marked Legal Priority 1, Emergency. This time he answers without seeking permission from anyone, his tone shifting to unmistakable executive authority that fills the cabin like a change in atmospheric pressure. The conversation is brief but loaded with implications that begin fundamentally reshaping everyone's understanding of the situation unfolding before their eyes. "Malik, the entire board has been waiting for 25 minutes now." The voice on the other end is clearly audible in the cabin's tense silence. The announcement was scheduled to go live across all company platforms and media outlets. Industry analysts are asking questions. "Where are you?" His response carries the natural authority of someone completely accustomed to making decisions that affect thousands of employees, millions of passengers, and billions of dollars in corporate assets. "I'm currently experiencing a situation that perfectly illustrates why our comprehensive cultural audit and systematic reform initiative was absolutely necessary," Malik replies with calm professionalism. I'll be addressing the board about systematic discrimination within Apex Airlines operations and the urgent need for immediate corrective action. David Morrison moves to forcibly terminate the call, but Malik's next words stop him like an invisible barrier of absolute authority that cannot be challenged or ignored. Please, inform the board that Flight 447 is experiencing a crew delay that may require immediate corporate intervention, federal civil rights investigation, and comprehensive media crisis management. Jennifer Walsh, who had been systematically photographing Malik like evidence for prosecution, suddenly looks uncertain as details she had previously dismissed begin forming a pattern that suggests catastrophic error in judgment. The quality of his legal consultation, his casual reference to our board, his detailed knowledge of flight operations, and his obvious familiarity with corporate crisis management begin connecting dots that paint a terrifying picture. Malik continues his call with increasing executive authority that transforms the entire cabin's atmosphere from hostile surveillance to shocked recognition. I need Liko to conference immediately with corporate security and human resources. Pull the complete employment files, performance reviews, and disciplinary records for David Morrison, employee number 7748, and Sarah Chen, employee number 9234. I also need the full passenger manifest, recorded crew communications, and security footage for this flight. Sarah's face drains of color, like water flowing from a broken vessel, as she realizes the implications of his detailed knowledge of company personnel systems and security protocols. Malik knows their employee numbers because all Apex Airlines crew members wear coded identification badges that include their personnel numbers, a security and accountability measure he had personally implemented during the corporate transition process to ensure transparency and responsibility throughout the organization. David, still failing to comprehend the scope of his catastrophic error, attempts to grab Malik's phone in a final act of misguided authority that will be remembered as the moment he sealed his own professional destruction. You have absolutely no legal right to access confidential company employment records. Malik calmly moves the phone away while maintaining direct eye contact that speaks volumes about relative power dynamics and authority structures. Actually, David, I have significantly more authority to access those records than you apparently realize. The phone conversation continues as the cabin falls into the kind of stunned silence that follows explosions. Please prepare immediate termination paperwork for the crew members I'll be identifying shortly. Contact our legal team about potential federal civil rights violations, hostile work environment protocols, and systematic discrimination liability. Officer Rodriguez finally asks the question that should have been posed an hour earlier, before federal authority was invoked to support systematic harassment. Sir, what exactly is your relationship to Apex Airlines? Malik's response detonates through the first-class section with the force of a seismic event that transforms everything everyone thought they understood about the situation. I'm the Chief Executive Officer. The words explode through the cabin with devastating impact that fundamentally alters the reality every passenger and crew member thought they understood. David's legs visibly wobble as if the aircraft floor has shifted beneath him. Sarah drops her notepad, the sound echoing in the sudden silence like a gavel falling in final judgment. Jennifer stops photographing immediately, apparently realizing she's been documenting her own career suicide in high-definition detail. The passengers who had been enthusiastically supporting the crew's systematic harassment suddenly find their phones intensely interesting, hoping to avoid eye contact with the man they've been watching being humiliated. Malik stands with natural authority and addresses the entire cabin in a voice that commands immediate attention from every person on the aircraft. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this unfortunate delay. I'm Malik Johnson, your Chief Executive Officer. What you've witnessed today represents exactly why Apex Airlines is implementing comprehensive company-wide cultural reform. He turned to David with the measured authority of someone who has just watched an employee systematically destroy their own career through willful prejudice and institutional arrogance. You are correct about one thing, David. This delay will absolutely be documented in detail. Every conversation, every decision, every assumption made will be thoroughly reviewed by federal investigators, our legal team, and civil rights organizations. As Flight 447 continues toward its destination, the full scope of consequences begins unfolding, with the methodical precision of a carefully planned corporate restructuring. Malik returns to his seat, but now receives the desperate attention of remaining crew members who realize they're witnessing career-ending events unfold in real time. Officer Rodriguez escorts David Morrison, Sarah Chen, and Jennifer Walsh to economy seats typically reserved for unruly passengers who pose genuine security risks. The role reversal is stark and deliberate. They are now the ones being monitored, documented, and treated as potential threats to flight safety and passenger well-being. Other crew members distance themselves with the urgency of people fleeing a contagious disease, clearly understanding that professional association with the terminated employees could end their own careers through guilt by association. Flight attendants who had remained silent during the systematic harassment now express horror at their colleagues' actions. Malik receives a priority call from Apex Airlines' head of human resources, her voice carrying the weight of institutional failure and potential legal liability. We've pulled their complete employment files, performance reviews, and disciplinary records. David Morrison has 3 formally documented complaints for discriminatory behavior that were inadequately addressed by previous management. Sarah Chen has 2 substantiated complaints from minority passengers. Jennifer Walsh was already on probation for inappropriate conduct toward passengers from protected classes. The systematic nature becomes crystal clear. This wasn't an isolated incident of individual prejudice, but a documented pattern of institutional discrimination. Word spreads through the cabin and beyond via social media with viral velocity that exceeds the aircraft's cruising speed. Passengers who had recorded the initial confrontation begin posting videos with captions like, "CEO experiences discrimination on his own airline," and "Racist flight attendants meet their new boss." The hashtags Apex Accountability Justice at 30,000 feet and CEO VSR Racism begin trending within minutes, accompanied by millions of views and shares across multiple platforms. The story spreads faster than the aircraft itself can travel, reaching news outlets and industry analysts before the plane reaches its destination. The elderly businessman who had delivered condescending lectures about gratitude and social hierarchy approaches Malik with visible discomfort and genuine embarrassment about his earlier behavior. "I want to sincerely apologize for my inappropriate comments earlier. I made assumptions based on appearances that were completely wrong." Malik stops him with gentle authority that contains no vindictiveness or desire for revenge. "Sir, I genuinely appreciate your apology and the courage it takes to admit mistakes publicly. The important question moving forward is whether you'll make those same assumptions about the next young black professional you encounter." Several passengers who had enthusiastically supported the crew's systematic harassment now avoid eye contact entirely, apparently hoping their recorded support for discrimination won't follow them beyond the aircraft. Most seem more concerned about their own viral infamy than expressing genuine remorse for their role in perpetuating injustice. David attempts to send text messages from his personal phone, likely trying to control the narrative or warn industry contacts about his termination and the circumstances surrounding his dismissal. Rodriguez confiscates the device, according to standard security protocol for terminated employees traveling on company aircraft. Sarah breaks down crying as the reality of losing her career and facing federal civil rights investigation finally penetrates her shock and denial. Malik observes her distress without satisfaction. He takes no pleasure in anyone's professional destruction, but recognizes that serious consequences are essential for creating systematic change. Within 24 hours, David Morrison, Sarah Chen, and Jennifer Walsh face federal civil rights charges, industry-wide professional blacklisting, and viral infamy that destroys their career prospects in aviation and hospitality. Their LinkedIn profiles are flooded with negative comments from industry professionals, publicly distancing themselves. Former colleagues and supervisors rush to publicly condemn discrimination through social media posts and press statements, while quietly removing any professional association with the terminated employees from their own profiles and recommendations. 3 weeks after the Flight 447 incident, Malik stands before the Apex Airlines board of directors in the company's executive conference room, presenting a comprehensive cultural transformation package that will reshape not only their organization, but the entire aviation industry's approach to discrimination and accountability. The systematic harassment he experienced becomes the catalyst for sweeping changes that extend far beyond one airline, forcing corporate America to confront uncomfortable truths about institutional prejudice and the absolute necessity of immediate, meaningful action. Malik reflects on the experience during a company-wide video address that reaches every Apex Airlines employee across their global network of operations. What happened on Flight 447 wasn't simply about 3 employees making catastrophically poor choices in a moment of prejudice. It represented a corporate culture that had allowed those choices to seem acceptable through years of inadequate response. He continues, with the moral authority of someone who has transformed personal injustice into systematic change that benefits countless others. Every single day, people face discrimination in ways both subtle and devastating. The difference, in my case, wasn't that I somehow deserved more respect. It's that I had the positional power to demand accountability. Our responsibility is building systems where everyone has that power. Apex Airlines implements the comprehensive Malik Johnson protocol. Mandatory anti-bias training for all employees, anonymous reporting systems with guaranteed whistleblower protection, swift consequences for discriminatory behavior at every organizational level, and regular cultural audits to identify and address systematic problems before they create hostile environments. Unemployment will be higher in the future, with 100% officer environments. Malik uses his platform and corporate resources to highlight broader issues that extend far beyond aviation or corporate settings. This incident achieved viral attention because of the dramatic power reversal, but thousands of people experience identical discrimination every day without cameras rolling or immediate consequences. They deserve justice too. The airline industry sees measurable improvements in diversity metrics, customer satisfaction scores, employee retention rates, and discrimination complaint resolution within months of implementing the new accountability protocols and cultural transformation requirements. Malik establishes the Johnson Foundation for Aviation Equality, providing scholarships, mentorship programs, and career advancement opportunities specifically for underrepresented minorities in the aviation industry. The terminated employees' former positions are filled through this program with candidates who embody the values Apex Airlines now demands. Malik concludes his reflection with words that resonate throughout the corporate world. True power isn't the ability to retaliate against those who wrong you. It's the ability to prevent those wrongs from happening to others through systematic change. That's the responsibility that comes with privilege and position. Malik Johnson's story resonates far beyond the aviation industry, inspiring accountability movements in corporations, institutions, and communities worldwide. His message becomes a rallying cry for systematic change that transforms individual experiences of injustice into collective action for social progress. The next time you witness discrimination in any form, ask yourself this critical question: what would I do if I had the power to change this situation completely? Then remember the most important truth of all. You absolutely do have that power, and using it is your moral obligation. He challenges viewers with specific, actionable steps that transform passive observation into active resistance against systematic injustice. Document discrimination when you see it happening. Speak up for those who cannot safely speak for themselves. Use whatever platform you have, social media, your workplace, your community organizations, to demand better from the institutions that serve us all. Malik receives thousands of messages from people sharing their own experiences of discrimination and taking concrete action within their spheres of influence. Teachers implement anti-bias curricula. Managers create inclusive workplace policies. Community leaders organize accountability initiatives. And ordinary citizens refuse to remain silent when witnessing systematic injustice. His final words become the foundation for a global movement toward accountability and systematic change. They didn't know who they were dealing with on Flight 4407. But the more important question for all of us is this: do you know who you are? Do you understand the power you possess to create meaningful, lasting change in your world? The video concludes with Malik's most powerful statement appearing on screen in bold letters. Justice delayed is justice denied. But justice documented, demanded, and systematically implemented is justice inevitable. Share your story. Document discrimination wherever you encounter it. Demand accountability from every institution that serves you. Be the change someone else desperately needs to see in their world. Apex accountability, systemic change, power of truth, justice inevitable.